Kirk Frost, a name tied to controversy, whispers, and endless drama. But no one expected the night to end like this. Flashing lights cut across Atlanta as an ambulance sped through the streets, sirens screaming into the night. Inside, Kirk lay motionless, his face pale, his chest rising shallowly. Reports say he collapsed suddenly, sending shockwaves through his family and fans alike. And standing just a few steps away, Rasheeda's scream tore through the silence. A sound so raw that even the paramedics froze for a second. This wasn't just another Frost family scandal. This was life or death. Cameras weren't rolling, but eyewitnesses described pure chaos. One moment Kirk was laughing at a dinner table, the next he was clutching his chest, slumping forward as the room erupted in panic. "Call 911. Rasheeda's voice cracked as she shook his shoulders, tears streaming down her face. Her cry echoed louder than any argument the couple ever had. People say she kept repeating, "Not like this, Kirk, please, not like this," as friends tried to pull her back so the medics could work. Fans who followed their rollercoaster marriage are stunned. This time, it's not cheating rumors, it's not secret weddings, it's not betrayal. It's Kirk's life hanging in the balance. By the time he was rushed into the hospital, crowds had already gathered outside, phones out, praying, recording, waiting. Love and hip-hop cast members showed up in disbelief. Some whispered it might be stress. Others hinted something darker, secrets catching up, karma finally knocking. In the waiting room, Rasheeda's sobs carried down the hall, piercing anyone who heard them. People close to the couple swear they've never seen her so broken, so vulnerable. Atlanta has witnessed scandals before, but nothing like this. And as the clock ticks, everyone's asking the same haunting question: will Kirk make it out of the ICU alive? Rasheeda's hands trembled as she sat in that cold hospital hallway, staring at the double doors of the ICU where Kirk was fighting for his life. Her mascara had already streaked down her cheeks, her chest rising and falling in rapid gasps, as if her body refused to accept what her eyes had witnessed just an hour ago. Fans are shocked, family members are divided, and emotions ran high in every corner of the waiting room. The Frost family, so used to dealing with gossip and accusations, suddenly found themselves facing something far more terrifying: science machines beeping, and doctors rushing past without saying a word. Every tick of the clock felt like a blade cutting deeper into her chest. Beside her, Kelsey Frost pressed her hands together, whispering silent prayers, her own eyes red and swollen. "Mom, he's gonna be okay," she whispered, but her voice carried no certainty, just a desperate attempt to hold on to hope. Rasheeda shook her head slowly, whispering back, "You don't understand. I felt it. I saw it." His eyes. Her voice cracked as memories of Kirk's sudden collapse replayed in her mind like a cruel loop. One second he was teasing her about her outfit, and the next his hand was clutching his chest, his body jerking forward, and his head hitting the table with a sickening thud. Her scream had echoed through that restaurant, her voice carrying outside to the crowd gathering on the sidewalk. Whispers filled the hallway now. Some fans had managed to sneak into the hospital lobby, holding their phones high, trying to capture every tear-stained moment. "This is serious," one of them murmured to another. Rasheeda screamed like she lost everything already. Their words stung, but Rasheeda didn't care anymore about the noise of the outside world. She was only listening for the sound of the door opening, for someone in scrubs to finally give her answers. The door burst open at last and Dr. Williams, the attending physician, stepped out. His face was grim, and his eyes avoided hers for a fraction of a second before he spoke. "Mrs. Frost, he's stable for now, but his heart condition is more severe than we expected. We've placed him on oxygen, and we're monitoring closely." Rasheeda's legs buckled, and she had to grip the armrest of her chair to keep from collapsing herself. "Heart condition? What heart condition? Kirk never told me about this," she shouted, her voice laced with anger and betrayal. The doctor hesitated, his glance flicking toward the others gathered there, as though he wasn't sure how much to reveal. "We'll explain everything inside, but for now, I suggest you prepare yourself. This won't be an easy road." With that, he disappeared again, leaving the room in stunned silence. Rasheeda's jaw clenched as she whispered, almost to herself, "So he kept even this from me." The tension exploded when Jasmine Washington appeared in the hallway, her heels clicking loudly against the polished floor. Gasps erupted instantly, fans lifting their phones higher, recording as the infamous other woman walked straight toward the waiting area. "What are you doing here?" Kelsey snapped, leaping to her feet. Rasheeda's eyes narrowed into slits, her grief momentarily replaced by raw fury. Jasmine raised her chin defiantly, her voice steady. "Because I have a right to be here. Kirk is my son's father. If something happens to him, it affects me too. Don't you dare. Rasheeda spat, pointing a trembling finger at her. Don't you dare walk in here acting like family? You destroyed this family. You don't get to cry at his bedside now. Voices rose, arguments overlapping as security tried to step between them, but every fan in that hallway was already live streaming the confrontation, flooding social media with clips of Rasheeda's piercing screams and Jasmine's icy replies. The family was left divided, wasn't just a phrase anymore, it was playing out in real time. Every tear and every accusation broadcasted to the world. Stop it. Kelsey finally cried, tears blurring her vision. This isn't about secrets or drama right now. This is about Dad fighting for his life. Her words silenced the hallway for a moment, but Rasheeda's heart still pounded in her ears. She sank back into her chair, shaking, whispering to herself. Why didn't you tell me? Kirk, why didn't you trust me? The weight of his hidden heart condition pressed down heavier than all the cheating scandals, all the betrayals combined. This wasn't a tabloid headline anymore. This was her husband's survival. And yet, even as the machines beeped behind the double doors, even as the Frost family sat fractured and fans watched in stunned silence, rumors began to spread. Some whispered that Kirk had known about his condition for months, maybe even years, and kept it buried to maintain his image. Others claimed stress from ongoing scandals had finally caught up to him. One fan muttered, "Karma, don't miss." Another shook her head, saying, "Nah, this is bigger than karma. This is truth catching up." Rasheeda closed her eyes, her breathing shallow, her mind racing. She could still hear his laugh, still see the smirk he wore when he thought he had everything under control. But now, stripped of his bravado, Kirk was lying helpless, and for the first time, Rasheeda felt the true weight of love mixed with betrayal, fear tangled with rage. In that hospital hallway, the world seemed to stop, and all that remained was a single, desperate question. Would Kirk fight his way back, or was this the beginning of the end? Kelsey wiped her face, pulled her hoodie tighter, and stared at Jasmine as if daring her to breathe too loud. The waiting room hummed with fluorescent lights and hushed gossip. A nurse rolled a cart past them, plastic wheels squeaking. And for a second everyone went quiet, listening for any hint from inside the ICU. Nothing but the steady rhythm of machines somewhere beyond the doors. Fans are shocked. Emotions ran high. The family was left divided, and the air felt heavy enough to choke on. Then the elevator dinged and opened to reveal young Jock with Kendra right behind him. Jock moved fast, scanning the room, his jaw set. "Where is he?" he asked, voice low but shaking. Kendra put a hand on his shoulder, her eyes flicking from Jasmine to Rasheeda and back, calculating the heat in the room. "We came as soon as we heard," she said, her tone careful, almost apologetic. Rasheeda nodded without looking up, her voice a rasp. "They won't tell me anything else yet, just that he's stable." "Stable doesn't mean safe." Carly Red slipped in next, tapping her phone off, eyes already glossy. "I swear I felt something wrong an hour ago," she whispered, perching on the edge of a chair. Like the room spun for a second? Call it intuition. Yandi and Mendeces followed a beat later, dressed down but impossible to miss. Yandi hugged Rasheeda tight, feeling the tremor under her friend's skin. "We're here. Whatever you need, we're here." Mendeces nodded at Kelsey, then eyed Jasmine like a security camera. "Tonight ain't the night for extra smoke," he said softly. "Let's keep it clear for the doctors." Jasmine folded her arms, chin up, but her voice softened a shade. "I'm here because my son asked where his father is. He wants to know if he's okay. I won't lie to a child." That landed like a stone on water, ripples spreading across every face in the room. Rasheeda inhaled sharply, eyes burning. "Then remember, he is a child," she said, each word steady now. "Don't turn this into content." The door swung open and a nurse called, "Mrs. Frost." Everyone turned. "You can see him for 2 minutes. Only you." The room erupted in overlapping protests, but the nurse shook her head. 2 minutes. Alone. Rasheeda rose on unsteady legs. Kelsey squeezed her, whispering, "Tell him I'm right here." Rasheeda nodded and walked through the doors into the strange quiet of the ICU. The room was colder, somehow thinner, as if the walls were holding their breath. Kirk lay there with wires across his chest, a clip on his finger, the pale rise of his ribs under a hospital gown. His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Rasheeda stood beside him, fingers hovering over his hand before she finally took it. "Hey," she whispered, the word breaking in the middle. "I'm here. You scared me. You really did it this time." The monitor beeped. A steady blink of green. In a corner stood a bouquet already wilting, a card tucked between stems with no name. She noticed a small plastic bin on the counter. A labeled bottle inside with a name she didn't recognize. Instructions she couldn't process. And her chest tightened again. Had Kirk been on medication she never knew about? How many secrets had he folded into his pockets while she smiled for cameras and pushed their brand forward? She leaned close to his ear. We can fight about everything later. But right now, you hear me? You are not allowed to leave. His fingers twitched. It wasn't much, but it was enough to light a spark under her ribs. Okay, she breathed. Okay. That's you telling me you heard. In the hallway, the simmer boiled over. Carly whispered to Kendra. I heard someone's been calling pharmacies in Midtown asking for refills under a different name. Same address as a Frost Business Suite. Kendra glanced at Jock, who was pacing again. Don't start a wildfire, she muttered. We don't know what we don't know. Jasmine, catching pieces of the rumor wind, stepped forward. If he had a condition, someone should have told me. My son should know. Mendices spoke up, voice level. Or maybe Kirk was protecting his pride. Men do that. We swallow pain like it's a vitamin and act surprised when it burns a hole in our chest. The nurse returned. You can rotate in pairs now. 2 minutes each. Kelsey and Yandi went next. While they slipped through the doors, a man in an expensive jacket approached the desk. His tone oily slick. I'm Kirk Frost's attorney. I need to see the attending. Security stepped in with polite steel. You can wait with everyone else. He smiled thinly and retreated to a corner. Phone already pressed to his ear. Voice too low to catch. Rasheeda re-emerged, steady on the outside, storming on the inside. She looked at the attorney and froze. What are you doing here? She asked, voice flat. He adjusted his cuff. Standard procedure. Healthcare, power of attorney, living will, that sort of thing. I brought a copy. Kelsey's head snapped around. Living will. The word sliced the room. Why would Dad have that? The lawyer blinked. Slow. Responsible adults have paperwork. Jasmine scoffed, but the sound held a flicker of worry. Responsible adults also tell their wife. A security guard called quietly from the elevator, and 2 more figures stepped out. One was a tall woman in a gray coat, face tense. The other, a skinny young man with a messenger bag hanging off one shoulder. The woman approached the desk. I'm Dr. Harper from Toxicology, Consulting. The room collectively stiffened. Toxicology. The word ricocheted. Carly's eyes widened. Toxicology as in poison. Dr. Harper's face didn't budge. As in ruling out every possibility. Nothing more, nothing less. The rumor engine revved. This is bigger, someone whispered near the vending machines. What if he was drugged? Another voice jumped in. Or, what if he mixed something? Stress meds, energy boosters, who knows? Phones flashed again, but the security guard raised a hand. No filming. Put them away. The guards were firm now, herding fans back toward the lobby. Still, whispers traveled faster than doors could close. Jock cornered the attorney. Jaw tight. Why you really here? The man's smile thinned even more. There's an insurance policy and a clause that requires immediate notification upon critical hospitalization. Kendra stepped closer. A clause like that usually has exclusions, she said lawyerly by habit, like intoxication or undisclosed conditions. The attorney stared at her, surprised she spoke the language. Something like that. He turned to go find coffee, but the subtext lingered like smoke. Rasheeda sat again, calmer now, not cold but carved out. She locked eyes with Jasmine. You're going to keep your voice down, she said, measured. You will not speak to press. You will not post anything. If you care about my husband, you will not turn his pain into headlines. Jasmine held the gaze, then nodded once. Slow. I won't, but I need answers to. Rasheeda swallowed, the motion tight. When I get them, you'll hear them. The ICU doors opened once more. Dr. Williams stepped out. We're running additional tests to rule out anything beyond cardiac distress. So far, it looks like an arrhythmia compounded by severe stress and dehydration. He paused, then looked at Rasheeda. Has he been sleeping? She shook her head. Barely. The doctor nodded like that piece fit a jagged puzzle. We will stabilize him. But I need a complete list of supplements, prescriptions, even energy drinks. Anything he's touched in the last week. Mendices dug in his pocket and pulled out a crumpled receipt. This fell out of his jacket when we helped carry him to the gurney at the restaurant, he said, handing it over. Vitamin shop, to energy shots, and something labeled Focus Extreme. The doctor sighed. That won't help. He took the receipt and returned inside. Minutes stretched. The attorney finally sat, flipping a folder open on his lap. Papers whispered. Kelsey looked over before he could close it again. In that sliver of visibility, she saw a document header with Kirk's name and a word she never wanted to see in this context. Directive. Her throat tightened. Did he sign something without us? She asked quietly. Something that says what happens if he. She couldn't finish. The attorney shut the folder. "Don't borrow fear," he said. But no one believed the gentleness. A sudden alarm wailed from behind the doors, a machine screamed that froze every muscle in the room. People jumped to their feet. A nurse ran past, followed by two more in quick succession. Kelsey's hands flew to her mouth. "No, no, no." Rasheeda stood, spine straight, not breathing. The alarm cut off and silence slammed down, heavier than before. A nurse appeared moments later, breathless but steady. "We adjusted a lead. He's okay." Every lung in the room exhaled at once, the sound like rain on a metal roof. Carly sat, shaking. "I can't do this heart attack roller coaster." Jasmine drifted to the far end of the hallway and made a phone call, whispering to the sitter watching her son. Her voice softened as she promised she would be home soon, then caught herself and corrected it to "when I can." When she hung up, she looked older by 10 years. "He deserves the truth," she said quietly to no one in particular. No shields, no edits. The skinny young man with the messenger bag approached the group, hesitant. "I'm sorry," he said, eyes darting to security. "I was at the restaurant. I filmed the first moments when he fell. I wanted to give this to the family, not the internet." He held out a USB stick. "It shows who handed him a glass right before." Rasheeda took it, fingers steady now. "Thank you." He swallowed. "I turned my comments off. People can be cruel." She nodded, pocketed the drive, and looked at Mendici. "Find somewhere I can view this." They ducked into a small consult room the nurses pointed out, a computer screen glowing to blue. Jock hovered near the door as a guard. Kendra took notes on her phone, and Jasmine stood back, arms wrapped around herself. The video loaded. Chaos in a bright dining room, laughter, then Kirk in focus, leaning back with his easy grin. A server approached with a tray, a glittering glass sweating in the light. Carly in the background, talking with someone out of frame. Then a hand, not the server's, slipped from behind and replaced one glass with another identical one. It happened in a blink. "Pause," Kendra said. Jock leaned in. "Who is that?" he asked, voice low. The camera wasn't perfect, but the sleeve was distinct, a small embroidered mark near the wrist. Mendices whispered, "That's a brand logo. I've seen that on a jacket." Carly's eyes went glassy. "Oh my God." She covered her mouth. "I know who wore that tonight." The room chilled. Outside, footsteps and whispers blurred into a distant tide while inside, everything zeroed in on a single frozen frame, a hand in a sleeve and a logo that shouldn't have meant anything, but suddenly meant everything. Rasheeda straightened, decision hardening her outline. "We're showing this to Dr. Williams and hospital security," she said. "And then we find out where that person is right now." The video resumed for 5 seconds more, and you could hear Kirk say, "2 new chapters," clinking glass, and then the music swelled, and the frame shook as the person filming rushed forward. They stepped back into the corridor, and the night felt different. There was grief, yes, and fear, yes, but now there was purpose. A track laid down under their feet. The attorney stood when he saw their faces. "What happened?" he asked. Rasheeda stared past him at the ICU doors, then at the USB in her hand. "We're done being passive," she said. "We're going to protect him." And as she spoke, another elevator dinged, another set of steps approached. And somewhere deep in the ICU, a monitor ticked on, steady as a metronome, measuring out the seconds until the next revelation. The video still burned in Rasheeda's mind as she sat slumped against the consult room wall, her phone buzzing with unanswered calls and messages piling up by the second. Social media had already exploded. Hashtags like #PrayForKirk and #FrostFamilyCrisis trended across platforms. Videos of her screams in the hospital hallway hitting millions of views within hours. Fans are shocked, the family was left divided, and emotions ran high as the world watched a deeply personal nightmare unfold like a season finale cliffhanger. Inside that cramped room, tension pressed thicker than the stale air. Jock muttered curses under his breath, pacing so fast the tiles seemed worn beneath his sneakers. Kendra tapped her screen, replaying the frozen frame, again and again, zooming on that embroidered logo. "It's not just a random sleeve," she said, voice sharp. "This is custom work. Not everyone owns a jacket like this." Mendices leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "That looks like something I've seen on Scrappy, but I don't want to point a finger without certainty." The room stiffened at his words, a storm of disbelief crashing at once. Rasheeda's heart thumped in her ears. "Scrappy," she whispered, almost refusing to hear it. "No, he wouldn't." Her voice cracked, breaking under the weight of both shock and fury. Carly Red exhaled hard, shaking her head. "I saw him at the party earlier, rocking that exact jacket. I thought nothing of it." But now her words trailed, hanging like poison in the air. Jock slammed his palm against the wall. Nah. We need to slow down. That's my brother. He wouldn't spike Kirk's drink. But even as he said it, his voice trembled. Before anyone could argue, the ICU doors creaked open and Dr. Williams stepped out again, his face a portrait of exhaustion. He's holding steady, he said, offering a small relief. But his heart took a serious hit. We need him calm. No stress, no shouting. If you're going in, you keep your voices low. Rasheeda nodded numbly, but her mind was elsewhere, torn between rushing back to Kirk's side and unraveling the mystery of that video. Fans in the lobby had already started spinning their own stories. What if it was planned? Someone whispered near the vending machines. What if this wasn't just a collapse, but a setup? Another voice replied, I bet Jasmine knows something. She showed up too fast, like she was ready. Rumors spread like fire, each more twisted than the last, feeding into the chaos. Rasheeda finally spoke, steady but sharp. No more guessing. No more rumors. We confront this head on. She looked at Mendes. Get me Scrappy. Now. Mendices hesitated, then pulled out his phone, dialing fast. The call rang once, twice, and then clicked. A tired voice answered. Yo, what's up? The room went silent as Mendices put it on speaker. Scrap, he said carefully, where you at? Scrappy's tone sharpened instantly. I'm home. Why? What's happening? Kendra cut in, her voice icy. What were you doing at the restaurant tonight? Silence stretched on the line. Same as everybody else. Scrappy said slowly, laughing, eating. Why? Jock's chest rose and fell like a drumbeat. You wore that jacket, right? The one with the stitched crown logo on the wrist. Scrappy hesitated too long. Yeah. Why? Rasheeda's hands balled into fists. Because someone in that jacket swapped Kirk's drink, and now he's in the ICU fighting for his life. The silence that followed was thick enough to crush bone. Scrappy's breath came fast through the line. Y'all accusing me? Me? I would never. His voice cracked raw with disbelief. That ain't me. Someone's setting this up. I swear on my mama, it wasn't me. But doubt had already dug its claws deep. Rasheeda's voice cut through like a blade. Then prove it. Because right now, all I see is betrayal wearing your sleeve. The call ended abruptly, the screen going dark, leaving the room in a choking silence. And just then, a nurse burst in, panic etched across her face. Mrs. Frost, come quick. His condition just changed again. Chairs screeched back, hearts pounding, and in a blur they all rushed toward the ICU doors. The steady beeping inside had shifted into a frantic rhythm, monitors flashing red. Rasheeda's scream echoed again, sharp and broken, as she clutched the doorway, watching doctors swarm Kirk's bed. Hold on, she whispered through tears. Just hold on. The storm wasn't only inside that hospital room anymore. Outside, the world watched, speculated, and gasped, as secrets, accusations, and betrayals circled like vultures. And for the Frost family, the night was far from over. The ICU room pulsed with chaos as alarms shrieked and doctors rushed to Kirk's bedside, their voices overlapping in a storm of commands. Rasheeda clung to the doorway, her knuckles white against the cold metal frame, tears streaking down her face as she whispered his name again and again. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided as the reality of Kirk's condition spiraled out of control. One doctor pressed on Kirk's chest, another adjusted tubes, a third barked for more medication. It felt like the whole world was collapsing into that one sterile room where life and death wrestled in silence. Between the frantic beeps, Rasheeda's body shook uncontrollably as she tried to step closer, but a nurse blocked her path. Please, you can't be in here right now, the nurse said firmly, her eyes kind but her arms unyielding. We need space to work. Rasheeda shook her head violently, sobbing. He's my husband, I can't just stand here. But the nurse held her ground, and Rasheeda's scream echoed through the corridor, piercing everyone's chest like broken glass. In the hallway, Carly Red buried her face in her hands while Kelsey gripped the back of a chair, her knuckles white. Jock stood frozen, his phone dangling in his hand, still buzzing with unanswered calls from Scrappy. The weight of suspicion had already shifted, and whispers buzzed through the group like electricity. Jasmine leaned against the wall, silent but unblinking, her eyes fixed on the ICU doors as though sheer force of will could drag Kirk back from the edge. After what felt like an eternity, the alarms dulled, the frenzy inside slowed, and Dr. Williams emerged, his face dripping with sweat. The hallway froze, every breath suspended in the air. We stabilized him, he said finally, his voice hoarse but steady. But it was close, very close. Rasheeda staggered forward, gripping his arm with desperate force. Is he going to make it? She demanded. The doctor hesitated, then said, "He's fighting. But I won't lie, his chances are fragile. What we need now is no stress, no conflict, and no more surprises." The room erupted in muffled sobs, relieved, yet still terrified. Rasheeda collapsed into a chair, her whole body trembling as the weight of the moment crashed over her. Kelsey crouched beside her, whispering prayers through tears. Mendices, his jaw tight, muttered under his breath, "Somebody set this in motion, and I'm not letting it slide." Kendra replayed the USB video on her phone again, staring at that embroidered sleeve. The image haunted her. "It's too clear," she whispered, "too deliberate. Someone wanted him weak, vulnerable." Jock snapped, his voice sharp with panic. "I'm telling y'all, Scrappy wouldn't do this. We grew up tighter than brothers. That's family." But the doubt in his eyes betrayed the loyalty in his words. Meanwhile, fans outside had turned the hospital into a circus. News vans parked crooked on sidewalks, lights flashing, microphones shoved at anyone who entered or exited. Hashtags climbed higher, comments flooded with speculation. Kirk's karma finally hit him. Some typed, "Pray for Rasheeda, she don't deserve this." Others wrote. Live streams pulled in hundreds of thousands of viewers, hungry for updates, hungry for chaos. Inside, Rasheeda's grief twisted into anger. She stood suddenly, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes sharp as daggers. "Bring Scrappy here," she said coldly. "If he's innocent, let him look me in the eyes and say it." Jock protested instantly. "That's not fair. Not when Kirk's lying in there fighting for his life." But Rasheeda's voice cut through him like steel. "What's not fair is my husband collapsing with poison in his veins while we sit here protecting suspects. Bring him here." As if summoned, the elevator dinged and Scrappy walked out, flanked by two of his boys, his face a storm of fear and fury. Cameras from the lobby turned instantly, lights flashing, reporters shouting questions. Security scrambled to hold them back as Scrappy pushed through, his hands raised in a mixture of surrender and defense. "Nah, y'all not pinning this on me," he barked the moment he spotted the group. "I loved Kirk like a brother. I ain't touch his drink." The tension in the hallway tightened like a noose. Rasheeda stepped forward, her voice trembling but fierce. "Then explain this." She shoved the phone in his face, replaying the frozen image of the hand swapping Kirk's glass. The embroidered sleeve gleamed under the hospital lights. Scrappy's eyes widened, his face flushing. "That's not me." "Yeah, that's my jacket, but I wasn't the one holding the tray." The group erupted in shouts. Carly hissed, "Then who was it? You the only one wearing that jacket tonight?" Jasmine smirked bitterly. "Funny how it's always somebody else's fault." Jock shoved his hand out to quiet them. "Let him speak. Scrap, if it wasn't you, who was it?" Scrappy swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "I let one of my boys hold the jacket earlier. Man, I took it off 'cause it was hot inside. I swear on everything, I didn't touch Kirk's drink." All eyes turned to the two men standing behind him, suddenly sweating under the fluorescent lights. One of them shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the exit. Mendices caught it instantly. "Lock the doors." He ordered security, his tone brooking no argument. "Nobody leaves until we know the truth." The guards obeyed, blocking the elevators as tension skyrocketed. Rasheeda's chest heaved, her eyes narrowing in on the fidgeting man. "Was it you?" she demanded, her voice cracking under the weight of both rage and heartbreak. "Did you touch his drink?" The man stammered, his lips trembling. "I didn't mean nothing by it," he muttered. The hallway exploded in gasps. Rasheeda lunged forward, her scream raw. "You tried to kill my husband." Security grabbed her shoulders, pulling her back as Kelsey sobbed into her hands. The man's voice shook. "I just thought it would make him chill, you know, just a little something to calm him down. I didn't know it'd do this." "What did you give him?" Dr. Williams cut in, suddenly appearing like a blade in the storm. The man hesitated, then pulled a small vial from his pocket, hands trembling. The doctor snatched it, his face darkening as he read the label. "This is no calming agent," he spat. "This is dangerous, mixed with alcohol or energy boosters. You could have stopped his heart completely." Rasheeda collapsed against the wall, her sobs guttural, her voice barely audible. "Why? Why him? Why now?" The man shook his head wildly. "I swear I didn't know. Scrappy told me to hold his jacket. I just thought it'd be funny." Scrappy shoved him hard against the wall. "Funny? You almost killed him, you stupid fool." The two men had to be separated by security as the hallway descended into chaos again. Outside, news of the confession leaked instantly, reporters blasting headlines. Kirk frost poisoned. Rasheeda confronts suspect in hospital showdown. The frenzy grew louder. Fans debating motives, alliances, betrayals. Inside, the Frost family was left shattered. Rasheeda finally found her voice, rising to her feet, her entire body trembling with fury. "I don't care what excuses you have," she said, pointing at the man who confessed. "You're done. The police will handle you." Security moved to drag him out as he shouted protests. But no one listened anymore. Dr. Williams turned to Rasheeda, his voice firm. "We'll adjust Kirk's treatment now that we know what's in his system. But understand his body is weak. We can't guarantee anything." The words stabbed her deeper than any betrayal ever had. She fell back into her chair, whispering over and over, "Just let him come back to me. Just let him come back." Hours stretched like years as the hospital quieted again. Scrappy slumped in a corner, his head in his hands, his loyalty to Kirk cutting deeper than the accusations hurled at him. Jock sat beside him, his face heavy with conflict. Jasmine paced the hallway, her phone buzzing with calls she refused to answer. Carly clutched her purse, whispering prayers under her breath. And Rasheeda, she sat frozen, staring at the ICU doors, her soul torn open. Every scandal, every fight, every betrayal suddenly felt small compared to the fragile line between Kirk's heartbeat and silence. And in that moment, she realized that the story wasn't about the lies or the secrets anymore. It was about love, survival, and the desperate hope that somehow, against all odds, Kirk Frost would open his eyes and fight his way back. But even as the Frost family prayed, even as doctors worked tirelessly, a new storm brewed beyond the hospital walls. Detectives arrived quietly, speaking to security, reviewing the USB, demanding statements. The man who confessed was dragged out in handcuffs, his face pale with fear. Reporters screamed questions, cameras flashing as he shouted back, "I didn't mean to. It was an accident." Inside, Rasheeda heard the echoes of his words and felt her stomach twist. Was it really an accident? Or was it something darker? Was Kirk the target? Or was this part of a bigger game no one yet understood? As the night deepened and shadows stretched across the hospital floor, the questions grew heavier, the answers further away. And so the Frost saga turned another page, one drenched in betrayal, survival, and the haunting uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. Days after the quiet nod in the park, the city felt different. Mornings carried a thin hush as if the night air had agreed to keep secrets. Both men worked in separate corners, trying to rebuild routines that did not wobble. Colt met with a counselor in a small office that smelled like rain and paper. He sat with hands folded and answered questions he had dodged for years. Marcus walked into a youth center that still had a cracked window from a winter storm, and began teaching teenagers how to tell stories without burning themselves down. It was awkward, and honest, and slow. Lena and Dana set up a shared calendar that listed school plays and dentist appointments. And the small victories of predictable days gave them both a fragile sense of relief. They traded texts that sounded stiff but kind. They agreed on what to ignore. They agreed to pause when voices rose. In private, they admitted they were exhausted. And still the noise pressed in. The Timeline article that suggested a third hand in the chaos kept rippling. A low-profile blogger dug deeper and posted a packet of screenshots that hinted at a name. The posts did not accuse outright. They simply asked if anyone else had noticed how often a certain manager appeared in rooms where misunderstandings began. The name was Sable. She was clever, charming, and everywhere for a season. She had a gift for spinning proximity into power. Nobody wanted to believe they had been led. Pride resists puppeteers. But the screenshots kept landing. The comments swelled. Fans were shocked to see how small moments lined up when placed on a single page. Colt read the thread at 2 a.m. He scrolled and felt a slow numbness settle. There was the text where Sable told a junior producer that making Colt and Marcus share a panel would juice the room. There was the email that framed a late arrival as a snub. There was a calendar entry that placed Sable in the hallway the night of the first shove. He remembered a perfume like cold sugar and a hand on his elbow when he had been seething. He remembered a whisper that sounded like concern but had felt like gasoline. Marcus saw the same thread an hour later, sitting on the edge of the couch in the dark. He remembered Sable telling him that Colt had laughed about him at a party he had not attended. He remembered the way rage had tasted when he believed it. He closed his eyes and felt foolish and wounded and still angry. Because learning the spark was planted did not erase the burns. Lena and Dana woke to their phones buzzing. They read the screenshots and met for coffee in a shop that opened early. Lena arrived first, set down 2 cups, and took a long breath before Dana walked in. Neither woman hugged. They sat and spoke like people who had survived a storm together but had not yet unpacked the debris. "If this is true," Dana said, "then we fought shadows. We also fought ourselves," Lena answered. Sable didn't make their pride, she just fed it. They agreed not to chase the woman. They agreed to focus on what they could rebuild. They agreed to bring the new information to the men when the time was right. Then the time arrived without asking. A charity gala invited both families weeks earlier. The invitation was gilded and earnest. The organizers wanted a live reconciliation for a cause that funded arts programs. The publicist had pushed it as an easy win. At first both households said no. After the timeline thread they said maybe, then yes, with limits. Scripts would not be forced. Apologies would not be staged. The event would raise money and no one would bleed. The night of the gala arrived with rain that tapped at windows like a persistent child. The venue glowed. The guests wore hope like perfume. Colt and Dana entered through a side door and walked a carpet that felt like theater. Marcus and Lena entered 10 minutes later. The buzz was instant. Cameras whispered. Fans at home posted clips of smiles that did not reach eyes. Emotions ran high, even under polished light. Backstage, a volunteer in a headset handed the men a schedule, a small speech, a check presentation, a handshake, a photo with children holding paint, a final toast. Clean, controlled. No sharp edges on the paper. The program began and held. The audience clapped in relief each time a segment concluded without incident. Colt spoke about second chances, about the hard Scrabble math of starting over. Marcus spoke about mentors and the grace that kept him from falling back. Their words did not hug, but they did not throw punches either. The host's shoulders relaxed. The executive director smiled. Then a sound technician waved for a pause. There was feedback in the line. A brief delay. A moment of dead air that does not play well on a live. Into that silence walked Sable. She did not crash the stage. She slipped through the side in a gown that flared like a red warning. She smiled at the host. She walked to the mic with the confidence of a person who assumes every room is already hers. The cameras caught audience confusion. The comments at home multiplied. Fans were shocked to see the name in real time. "I'm here to present an award," she said. Her voice was sweet glass. The host blinked. There was no such award in the program. The director squinted at a cue sheet that did not list her. The staff on headsets murmured in confusion. Sable continued without waiting for permission. "An award for authentic storytelling and unflinching honesty." Lena understood first. Her stomach dropped. Dana stood up. The men stepped forward at once. Sable lifted an envelope like a magic trick. "The award," she said, "goes to conflict itself, because without it none of us would be here." People laughed, then stopped, because something about the moment bent. Sable winked at the camera. "And to the men who gave us a season we'll never forget." The director cut the mic, but the room had already heard enough. A ripple of anger moved through the crowd. Marcus reached the stage edge. Colt took the stairs 2 at a time. Security converged. Sable backed away with a practiced fluster. Colt stood at the mic and spoke without looking at her. "No," he said. "Not tonight." The audience went quiet. "Not for the kids. Not for the people here who need the money we promised to raise. Not for the staff who invited us to make something right." Marcus came to his side. He did not touch Colt. He stood close enough to count a heartbeat and spoke. "We were foolish," he said. "We let whispers write our choices. We let a story get told through us instead of by us." He looked at Sable, then back to the audience. "That ends now." Sable smiled like a person who reads the room and begins drafting an exit. She turned and walked toward the wings. Security did not grab her. Spectacle has rules in rooms with donors. But the apology she had hoped to deny was now too visible. The audience clapped. Not for the men exactly. For the possibility of control. The rest of the program ran on time. The check was presented. The children held up their drawings. Colt and Marcus shook hands and did not pretend it fixed everything. The live stream ended with a song from a choir that had learned to harmonize across differences. Outside, the rain stopped. The air felt rinsed. In the quiet after the gala, the public argument shifted. Next day headlines framed the night as a narrow victory for restraint. Fans who had cheered for chaos grudgingly admitted that calm held more power on a stage than rage. The family was left divided in the comments, but less so in the living rooms that mattered. Still, the story was not done. The manipulator had been named without being punished. People wanted consequences. Others wanted to move on. Life had its own opinion. 2 weeks later, a small fire burned through a storage unit near the youth center where Marcus taught. Nobody was hurt. The loss was supplies and 2 boxes of donated instruments. But the smoke carried a panic that had been living under the skin of everyone involved. The police said, faulty wiring. The building owner agreed. Marcus stood outside with black smudges on his hands where he had moved debris and felt a familiar tremble in his bones. Lena arrived with bottled water and steady eyes. She did not ask if he was all right. She handed him a towel and stood near enough to lend her breath. Colt heard about the fire on his phone between appointments. He sat in his car and stared at his reflection in the window. In another life, he would have called a camera crew and filmed himself delivering a donation, loud and proud. Instead, he drove to a warehouse where his friend kept a rehearsal space and asked if there were spare instruments he could borrow. He loaded a van with cases and stands and drums that had stories baked into their skins. He called no press. He drove across town. He found Marcus sweeping ash out of a doorway with a broom whose bristles were melting at the ends. Colt parked, lifted the van door, and started hauling cases into the room without a word. Marcus watched him for a long beat, then grabbed the other end of a keyboard and carried it inside. Neither man spoke. The only sounds were cases thudding and tape ripping and the occasional bark of laughter from teenagers, who could not believe what they were seeing. Lena and Dana arrived like they had planned it, though they had not. They set up a folding table with sandwiches and paper cups. They coordinated volunteers with the crisp efficiency of people who had run households through storms. Emotions ran high but nobody cried. They sweated and carried and clapped. The work wrote its own sentence. A local reporter walked by at the wrong moment and snapped a photo through the open door. The image of both men lifting a drum kit together hit the internet within an hour. The caption read, "After the flames, a rebuild." Fans were shocked again, but the shock felt softer. The family in the comments argued, but the edges dulled. The picture did something the sit-down had not. It made the truce look like muscle. The rebuild became a rhythm. Colt began spending 2 afternoons a week at the center. He did not teach. He fixed chords and tuned strings. He showed kids how to pack a case so that nothing breaks in the car. Marcus asked him to speak once, and Colt shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "If I talk too soon, I'll start performing again." Marcus nodded in respect. Meanwhile, Sable tried to stage a comeback. She posted a video that painted her as a misunderstood strategist. She spoke about narrative and hunger and how bold moves are punished when they come from a woman. Some viewers nodded. Others turned the video off. The timing was wrong. The world had seen the cost. Even people who loved drama were calculating. One night, a boy named Ronnie, who had the kind of stubborn that turns into leadership if someone steers it, asked Colt a question as they coiled cables. "Why didn't you swing at him again when you were on the stage?" he said, meaning Marcus, at the gala. Colt took a breath and looked at the boy the way a man looks at his younger self when he wants to be careful. "Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is nothing," he answered. "But it's not the same as giving up. It's choosing what you want more. I wanted my life more than I wanted to be right." Ronnie nodded like he would revisit the line later. The center hosted a small showcase a month after the fire. Teenagers performed under lights borrowed from a church and a school. Parents sat on metal chairs and cried quietly when a song landed. Lena stood beside Dana near the back, and they clapped until their hands stung. Colt watched from the wings with his arms crossed, trying not to grin too wide. Marcus moved along the aisle and high-fived kids after they stepped off the stage. The show ended with a group number that was off-key and perfect. After the applause settled, a hush rolled in. Marcus walked to the mic. He looked at the teenagers, then at the adults, and finally at Colt. He spoke like a person putting down a stone that had been heavy too long. "I am sorry for the things I said and the things I refused to hear," he said. "I am sorry for letting pride speak louder than love." The room did not breathe. Colt stepped forward. His voice did not wobble. "I am sorry for throwing a fist when I should have thrown a rope," he said. "I am sorry for believing every whisper that praised me, and every whisper that poisoned me." He turned to the kids. "Some of you will be told that your power is your anger. Sometimes that will be true. But more often, your power will be your choice when you have every right to burn something down and you walk away instead." Nobody shouted. The moment did not turn into a clip with flames at the edges. It settled like rain into dry ground. The family was still divided online, but in that room it looked like a family again. In the weeks that followed, the legal fallout landed like a delayed echo. Sable's contracts dissolved. SHE pivoted to another industry with less public scrutiny. Producers rewrote policies. Panels no longer placed rivals without mediation. Social staff learned the difference between hype and harm. Sponsors issued guidelines that said nothing new and everything necessary. The business remembered it was built on people. Colt went back to the counselor who smelled like rain and paper and kept going until showing up felt less like penance and more like maintenance. Marcus kept teaching until the youth center's cracked window got replaced. And then he reached out to the small club owner who had loaned a stage for the showcase and set up a monthly series. Lena and Dana started a quiet support circle for partners who live with the aftermath of public chaos. They did not brand it. They did not post about it. They put a card on a bulletin board and let the right people find it. One afternoon, months later, Colt sat on a low wall outside the center and watched a group of kids argue about the set list. Marcus dropped beside him with 2 bottles of water. They did not talk for a while. The air was easy. "I keep thinking about the first push," Marcus said finally. "How small it looked on camera and how big it felt inside my chest." "I keep thinking about the last nod," Colt answered. "How small it felt at the time and how much moved after it." They did not thank each other. They did not rehearse forgiveness. They watched the doors open and a flood of kids press through them, each carrying instruments as if they had been carrying them all their lives. By evening, the room thrummed again. A young drummer counted off and missed the 4, then laughed and started again. A singer forgot a line and made one up that was better. A keyboard player closed his eyes and found the chord he had been hunting. Joy rose and filled the ceiling. The people who had nearly destroyed their circle stood in the middle of it and held the sound steady. When the night ended, the 4 of them walked to the parking lot in a slow line. Lena unlocked the car and laughed at something Dana said. Marcus carried a crate to save a kid 2 trips. Colt double-checked the back door and wiggled the handle until it clicked. The sky was that deep blue that looks like velvet. The air smelled like summer. They said goodnight in voices that would never trend. They went home to houses that looked quiet from the street and alive from the inside. The story did not erase what came before. The timeline still existed. The first blow was still the first blow. But another timeline had been laid on top of it, one in which people chose not to be the worst version of themselves. It did not make a headline, it made a life. And in the dim rooms where decisions are made, that was enough. The lobby had turned into a flashing battlefield of microphones, camera rigs, and ring lights stacked on tripods like iron trees, all pointing toward a single target, the door that led to the ICU. Reporters tugged at sleeves, producers whispered into earpieces, and a sea of voices layered over the sterile hum of the hospital like static you couldn't turn off. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided as strangers shouted questions that sounded like accusations. Who poisoned Kirk? Was it planned? Is Rasheeda pressing charges? Will this end love and hip-hop forever? Security formed a human wall while detectives slipped in and out, moving like shadows with badges. One of them, a woman with a neat bun and a face that didn't blink much, approached the nurse's station. "We'll need the visitor log for the last 6 hours, she said, voice flat, almost bored. Boredom meant she'd seen worse than this, and somehow that made the whole night colder. The nurse handed over a clipboard with scribbled names and shaky signatures. The detective scanned it, tapping her pen against one entry. "This one, signed twice with 2 different pens," she murmured to her partner. "Find them." On the sidewalk, 3 different live streamers battled for the loudest audience. One fanned herself with a hospital pamphlet and declared, voice trembling theatrically, that she had seen Jasmine slip past security wearing a smirk. Another insisted that Scrappy had left in a rage, which wasn't true, but truth had no weight in this storm. A third host.com, but ruthless, collected voice notes from anonymous insiders who swore this was about a business deal gone sour. The comments scrolled so fast they blurred. "Pray for Kirk. He's toxic anyway. Don't speak on a family crisis. I knew it was jealousy. Lock them all up. Release the footage. Where's Rasheeda? Where's the son? Where's God?" The internet asked every question except the only one that mattered. Would he live? Inside, the detectives played the USB again in a small room with low lights and a table scarred by previous tragedies. They watched the glass swap, the clink, the cheer. The collapse captured the way a fall never feels real until you hit the floor. The detective with the bun rewound to the embroidered sleeve and froze it in perfect high definition. She traced the logo with her pen against the screen. A small crown with jagged points. "Custom," she said. "Maybe limited run. Maybe a boutique." Her partner made a note. Cross-reference boutiques within a 5-mile radius that sold inventory like this in the last 90 days. "And get me their security footage." The arrested man had been placed in a stark interview room 2 floors down, and the fluorescent lights did him no favors. Sweat gleamed in his hairline, and the bravado that snapped in the hallway had been replaced by a hollow tremor. "I told her, I didn't mean it," he said for the 7th time. It was supposed to calm him down. Everybody was on edge. "I thought it would stop an argument before it started." The detective's face did not forgive the word thought. "You thought wrong," she replied, writing nothing, just letting the silence push on his chest. "Who gave you the vial?" He stared at the table. "It was in the pocket of that jacket." "Whose pocket?" The detective's pen hovered, but still didn't touch paper. "Did you see him put it there?" The man shook his head so violently it looked like he wanted to shake the whole night off his bones. "No, I didn't see nothing except the inside lining." In the waiting area, the cast scattered like chess pieces, each holding in their hands a version of loyalty and a version of fear. Carly Red leaned against a vending machine that wouldn't drop her water, as if even the machine had decided to withhold. "This is going to explode," she whispered, half to herself, half to the camera she wasn't allowed to use. "And if Kirk doesn't wake up, the internet won't ever let this go." Kelsey walked past with a blanket folded under her arm, face pale and stubborn. "I don't care about the internet," she said. "I care about my dad breathing tomorrow morning." Yandi and Mendices set up an informal perimeter to shield Rasheeda from the worst of the chaos. They moved like the practiced ones. People who know that public grief is a sport spectators feel entitled to. Yandi kept fending off calls, her phone a stubborn ember in her palm. "Tell them we'll make a statement when we have facts," she said to no one in particular, because no statement would ever be good enough. Mendices stood in front of a camera crew that managed to slip closer than the others. "You got your shot," he said, voice calm but final, hand covering the lens. "Now leave her alone." Jock and Scrappy found a corner near a silent TV, the screen reflecting back broken headlines while the sound stayed mercifully off. Scrappy kept repeating the same sentence, as if repetition might eventually make the world accept it. "I didn't touch his drink." Jock stared at the blank TV and said, "I know. I need you to stay ready to prove it." Scrappy lifted his eyes, raw and a little wild. "How do I prove a ghost didn't move my hands?" Jock squeezed the bridge of his nose. "We find the person who wore your jacket. Someone saw something. Someone always sees something." An older woman in a floral scarf approached them, shaking, eyes shiny. "I know this is messy," she said, voice soft, careful, "but I was near the bar. I saw a woman with long nails and a silver ring with a stone like a raindrop. Her sleeve looked like that, like the picture I saw on the live." She reached over the tray. Scrappy turned to her so fast the scarf fluttered. "Do you remember her face?" The woman flinched. "No, baby. The music was too loud, and I ain't no investigator, but she had that ring. I remember because it was so pretty, like a window you could see yourself in." Carly looked up from the vending machine at that. "A raindrop ring," she murmured. "Oh no." She knew someone who wore that ring. So, did half of Atlanta? A trend last month, a limited drop this month, a clone of a heirloom the next. The ring was as good as a shadow. Detectives moved through the lobby and began speaking with clusters of guests, their notepads catching fragments. Raindrop ring, silver jacket, a voice like sugar turned sharp, a scent like vanilla and gasoline, a giggle that didn't belong to the group standing nearest her. These weren't facts yet, just scents and echoes. But that's how storms get mapped when the radar fails. "By the way, the wind stings your eyes." Meanwhile, the hospital's night manager approached Rasheeda with a small, reluctant smile, the kind that tries to comfort while begging not to break. "We've updated his meds with what toxicology recommended," she said. "He's resting. His heart rate is steady. You can sit inside again if you promise to be quiet." Rasheeda stood as if pulled by a magnet and nodded. She paused at the door, turned back to Jasmine, and said, "You can come with me for 2 minutes." Jasmine blinked, surprised, then followed, keeping a careful distance. The ICU hummed like a spaceship, all wires and hidden currents. Kirk lay still under a soft blue blanket, his face both older and younger than it had looked 12 hours earlier. Jasmine stayed near the foot of the bed, hands clasped so tight her knuckles went chalk white. Rasheeda took Kirk's hand the way a person takes a pen to sign a treaty they never wanted to negotiate. "Hey, it's me," she said. "We're still here." Jasmine tried to speak and found her voice caught on a thorn. "Kirk," she said finally, barely audible, "your son asked if you were dreaming. I told him God gives us strong dreams when we need to fight." A monitor gave a bored little beep and then remembered its job and resumed with purpose. Rasheeda brushed a curl away from Kirk's forehead. "You've done a lot of messy things," she whispered, "but this one ain't on you. So come back and tell me who it is." Jasmine looked up sharply, then swallowed whatever reply had risen. For once, there was nothing to win, only someone to save. Outside, the investigators collected footage from the restaurant, the valet stand, the sidewalk camera that didn't technically face the restaurant but captured reflections in its glossy windows. A grainy rectangle of glass became the star witness. It showed silhouettes in silver and black, a tray passing hand to hand, and a glittering shard at a wrist that could have been a raindrop ring or a trick of the light. The detective with the bun stared at it until the pixels swam. "Somebody always thinks they're invisible," she said to her partner. "And somebody's phone always thinks otherwise." By dawn, the crowd had thinned but never disappeared. The sunrise poured pale gold through the automatic doors, making the lobby look new for a second, like the night could be cleaned up if the light just tried hard enough. Kelsey slept crooked in a chair with a blanket over her shoulders. Carly finally got her water and held it like a trophy. Yandi prayed without moving her lips. Mendes paced the length of the hallway and back again, counting steps like they were rosary beads. Scrappy sat with both hands on his knees, staring at nothing, jaw set in a way that said he had chosen a fight with the world if the world wanted one. Then a whisper cut across the quiet like a razor through silk. She posted. Phones snapped up in perfect choreography. An account that lived for the edges of scandal had uploaded a blurry screenshot of a woman's hand holding a glass at the restaurant. Silver nails. A raindrop ring. The caption read, "Guess who switched the sip?" Followed by a string of eye emojis and a tag that wasn't quite a tag. A nickname that could mean 3 different people depending on which corner of Atlanta you called home. Comments detonated within seconds. The detectives arrived at the same post before any of them could say do not share. The detective with the bun shut her eyes once, opened them, and said, "Request takedown, capture originals, and figure out who fed it to them. Leaks mean motive." Rasheeda's phone buzzed. She glanced down, saw the post, and slid the phone face down on the chair. She didn't look at anyone as she said, "We're not chasing ghosts online. We're staying on the truth." Her voice was calm, but the force beneath it could have cracked stone. The others nodded, grateful for something that sounded like a plan. The attorney returned with paperwork and tired eyes. "I know this isn't top of mind," he said to Rasheeda, "but hospital administration needs signatures. The living will gives you authority to decide on his care." He did that right. A fraction of relief flashed across her face so quickly you could have missed it. "He did something right," she repeated, softer, as if she wanted the sentence to land in Kirk's chest and wake it up. Detectives asked for statements in a small sunlit conference room. They kept the tone respectful but relentless. Kendra recounted the timeline with surgical clarity, ticking off minutes and faces. Jock gave names, routes, who hugged whom and how long, because people who are hiding either hug too long or not at all. Jasmine told them about the sitter call and the timestamp. Yandi provided a list of influencers who had arrived after the collapse but posted as if they'd been there all night. Carly admitted she'd seen the jacket near the bar and had thought nothing of it until it was the only thing to think about. Scrappy said it again, "It wasn't me," then added, "Find the valet footage. Whoever grabbed my jacket for a quick pic is on that tape." An hour later, the detective with the bun came back with a still image printed on copy paper. It was squinted and rough, but it showed a figure stepping toward the valet stand with a familiar crown-stitched cuff visible as a blur. The face was half-turned, caught in the reflection of a windshield. The raindrop ring flashed like a signal flare. The outline of a jaw suggested one person, and the tilt of the head suggested another. "We're getting closer," the detective said. "The camera across the street has a better angle." "A grocery store. Their manager owes me a favor." But closeness wasn't closure. The hospital's clock clicked toward lunchtime like a metronome that didn't believe in mercy. And the day brought more of everything. More prayers, more false leads, more interviews, more takes, more opinions. The cast group chat split into arguments and solidarity in equal measure. Every time someone typed, "Let's hold off," someone else typed, "We can't let the wrong story win." Lying under all of it was a silent grief so heavy it could drown a person without leaving their clothes wet. Mid-afternoon delivered a small miracle, the way rain sometimes arrives in a single fat drop before the sky remembers how to pour. Kirk's eyelids trembled. Just a flutter, just enough to make the monitor's rhythm skip like a happy heart might. A nurse leaned in. "Mr. Frost, can you hear me?" The flutter came again, longer this time, like a moth remembering its wings. The nurse called the doctor, and the doctor called Rasheeda, and Rasheeda called God with her whole body as she pressed both hands to Kirk's, whispering, "Hey, hey, I'm here." His lips parted. Not words, just air. But it was a yes in another language. Word traveled out of the ICU, like heat from a match. Fans outside screamed prayers that sounded like cheers. The live streamers modulated their voices to serious soft, the kind they use when pretending to respect a family's privacy while counting ad revenue. Scrappy cried without bothering to hide his face. Jock hugged him and clapped his back and said, "We're not done, but we're not dead." Yandi leaned against the wall and let her eyes close for 10 seconds she hadn't allowed herself all night. Kelsey laughed, the sound breaking and mending mid-breath. Detectives didn't soften, they tightened. Survival meant motive might shift. Attempted harm could replace tragedy with trial. The detective with the bun returned from the grocery store camera with a new still and a new certainty. She laid the paper on the table and pointed. "There," she said. The reflection had sharpened into recognition. A face everyone knew. Not a nemesis. Not a rival. Someone who had perfected the art of being in every room without being the reason for the invitation. An assistant to a manager to a star. A runner who held bags and secrets. The person you ask to charge your phone and forget. You asked until your battery is full and your private messages have been noted and filed away in a head that never stops adding edges to its map. The assistant had left the hospital at dawn. They thought no one saw because they didn't walk out the front. But cameras love back doors. Detectives tracked their route to a rideshare and from there to a small apartment over a nail salon that smelled like acetone and ambition. The knock on the door was gentle. The voice that answered was not. What they found inside wasn't a smoking gun. It was a small ceramic dish with a raindrop ring resting, like a trophy beside a half-empty vial, and a jacket cuff with a crown stitched into the edge, cut clean with scissors. Sometimes guilt doesn't throw things away. It keeps them for later, because later has always been kind. The arrest did not feel like victory inside the hospital because victory would have been a night without bleach smells and beeping and blankets that itch, but it brought a hush that wasn't fear. It brought a murmur that sounded like maybe. The news hit the lobby and then the sidewalk and then the city. And the narrative snapped into place like a rubber band that had been stretched so hard it almost forgot it was still a circle. Fans said they knew it. Fans said they never suspected. Fans said this proves fame is a poison, then posted 4 times about it. The family was left divided on some things but united on this. Protect the living and tell the truth. As evening rolled in, the sky over Atlanta turned the color of bruised peaches, and the hospital lights clicked brighter to pretend it was still day. Rasheeda sat beside the bed and talked about boring things on purpose. The kitchen cabinet squeaks again, she told Kirk. "I'm gonna make you fix it when you're home." Jasmine stood in the doorway and added, "Your son says the cereal you bought is stale. He wants the kind with the marshmallows. He says that's your fault and you owe him." The monitor kept its steady time, a beat that felt, for the first time in 20 hours, like music. Somewhere between those steady tones and the muffle of the city, the detective with the bun walked to the waiting area and gave the group the outline. No flourish, no performance, just the bones. A petty anger that wanted to look like power, a vial that wanted to look like control, a ring that wanted to look like belonging, and a man who wanted to live. "We'll handle the rest," she said. And for once, everyone believed her because evidence is a healer even if it doesn't heal everything. The night nurse offered blankets that didn't itch as much. Scrappy finally stopped repeating the sentence and let sleep tug at the edge of his eyes. Jock stayed up to take the first watch because men who build their names on laughing know when to earn silence. Carly typed a draft for later and saved it as a note instead of a post. Yandi texted the group chat. "No comments yet. Wait for Rasheeda." Mendices wrote back. 10-4? Kelsey curled up 2 chairs away from her mother and dreamed of cabinets that don't squeak. And in the ICU, Kirk moved 1 finger, then 2. Like a drummer checking the hi-hat in a dark room before the crowd hears the first song. The nurse whispered "good sign" as if the words themselves could scare it away if spoken too loud. Rasheeda laid her head on the mattress edge and closed her eyes for the first real minute since the world tilted. Fans are shocked. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided. But the line on the monitor had found its rhythm again, and sometimes rhythm is all a family needs to start over. Outside, the city kept talking. It always does. But inside, the sound that mattered most was small and stubborn and impossibly brave. A heartbeat, choosing again and again to keep going. The night didn't end, it just shifted colors. Atlanta's skyline blinked with neon. Traffic moved like blood through the city's veins. But for the Frost family, time froze inside the sterile cocoon of the hospital. Kirk's heartbeat tapped out a fragile rhythm on the monitors, steady enough to give hope, weak enough to keep everyone on edge. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided as the drama stretched into another relentless chapter. Rasheeda hadn't moved from the bedside, her hand wrapped around Kirk's as if she could will strength into his veins. Every so often she whispered things he couldn't quite hear. Or maybe he could, maybe somewhere in the fog he was clinging to her voice like a rope pulling him back from the dark. Jasmine sat in the corner of the room, silent, her phone dark for once, the glow replaced by the shadow of guilt and exhaustion. Outside, police presence thickened. Detectives moved in and out with folders, laptops, even cups of burnt coffee that steamed under the hospital's harsh lights. The assistant who wore the raindrop ring had been taken into custody, but the story refused to settle. Rumors ran faster than facts, and speculation drowned out certainty. Some said the assistant acted alone. Others claimed they were following orders. Bloggers insisted this was tied to old debts, while conspiracy threads linked it to secret affairs. No matter the angle, the common thread was chaos, and chaos is what kept the cameras rolling. Scrappy sat slumped against a wall, his face heavy, his loyalty tested to the edge. Jock kept watch over him, not because he doubted him, but because he knew the world already did. Carly hovered nearby, her eyes darting, calculating what this scandal meant not just for Kirk, but for everyone tied to the Frost legacy. Mendices muttered about lawyers. Yandi tried to calm him, but every few minutes, someone's phone buzzed with a new post, a new leak, a new fire to put out. Detective Taylor, the one with the bun, returned with a stack of fresh papers and a thin smile that wasn't relief so much as recognition. We dug deeper into the assistant's history, she said flatly. They weren't just a runner. They've been in and out of 3 management companies in the last 5 years. Always close to money, always close to secrets. She set down a photo. The assistant stood grinning next to another figure, an old rival of Kirk's from way back. Someone whose name still carried venom in Atlanta circles. This isn't random, the detective said. This was planted. Rasheeda looked up from Kirk, her face tight, drained but fierce. So this wasn't about calming him down. This was about ending him. Her words dropped like weights in the room. Kelsey, who had just walked in carrying a cup of tea she hadn't sipped, froze midst. Ending him. Like murder. Her voice cracked on the word. No one answered. Outside the ICU, the crowd swelled again as night turned back into morning. Some brought posters that said "Pray for Kirk." Others held signs accusing Jasmine of knowing more than she let on. Live feeds showed clashes between fans who believed in forgiveness and fans who wanted someone's head on a platter. One stream showed a fight breaking out, fists flying under fluorescent hospital lights, police breaking them apart. The chaos wasn't just inside anymore. It was spilling onto the streets. Detectives scrambled to shut down the leaks. But more screenshots surfaced, texts allegedly between the assistant and an unknown contact, discussing tonight's distraction. Nobody knew if they were real or doctored, but it didn't matter. They spread like wildfire. Every news outlet, every gossip blog, every fan account posting them with captions like "This proves it," and Kirk was a target. Back inside, Kirk stirred again. His eyelids flickered, his fingers twitched, and the room froze in a single breath. Rasheeda leaned close, whispering, "Baby, it's me, you're safe." His lips parted, and this time a sound came out, faint, raspy, but enough to silence every doubt in the room. He rasped, then coughed, machines beeping louder. "Don't talk," Rasheeda said quickly, tears welling. "Just rest." But his eyes fluttered open, glazed but focused, and they locked on her face. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. No cameras, no detectives, no betrayals. Just 2 people caught between survival and love. Rasheeda sobbed, her forehead pressed to his hand, whispering, "You're here. Thank God, you're here." Jasmine turned away, tears sliding down her face she didn't want anyone to see. But survival only meant the questions grew louder. Detectives leaned in, asking Rasheeda for patience. "When he's stronger, we'll need his statement," they said. "He might be the only one who knows exactly what happened." Rasheeda nodded, though the thought of dragging Kirk into more interrogation made her stomach twist. And so the saga stretched forward, every breath a cliffhanger, every revelation another match tossed into dry grass. Fans demanded answers. The media demanded blood, and the Frost family demanded peace that wouldn't come easy. The hospital had become both battlefield and sanctuary. And as Kirk's heartbeat steadied and his eyes fought to stay open, one truth rose above the noise. This story wasn't ending here. It was only just beginning, and Atlanta was ready to watch every second of it. And so here we are, standing at the edge of one of the most shocking nights in Atlanta history. A night where flashing ambulance lights painted the streets red, where screams echoed through hospital walls, and where the Frost family stood divided, exposed, and vulnerable in front of millions of eyes. Kirk Frost, a man who has carried more scandals than most can count, now lies fragile, fighting for every single heartbeat, while Rasheeda's cries still hang in the air like a wound that will never heal. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided. But the truth remains, this was never just another love and hip-hop storyline. This was a raw reminder that even the strongest names can shatter. That behind every headline and rumor there are tears, blood, and silence heavy enough to break the earth in half. You watched as detectives uncovered betrayal from the most unlikely places. You saw the embroidered sleeve, the raindrop ring, the assistant who thought they could hide behind shadows. You heard the gasps when Rasheeda screamed, when Scrappy defended himself, when Jock tried to hold everything together, when Jasmine stood silently, her own heart breaking in ways words could never capture. And through it all, Kirk lay in that ICU bed, machines singing the rhythm of survival while the world outside debated karma, loyalty, and destiny. But what does this mean for you, the viewer, the fan, the witness to this storm? It means you are part of this story now. Every click, every comment, every share carries weight. You decide whether this family heals or whether the chaos drowns them. You decide whether the narrative becomes one of survival or one of suspicion. You are not just watching, you are shaping what happens next. Think about it. If Kirk wakes fully, if he finds his voice again, will he speak of forgiveness? Or will he point fingers? Will he reveal secrets deeper than the poison in his veins? Or will he fight to rebuild the trust that fractured long before that drink was swapped? And what about Rasheeda? Does this break her for good? Or does it harden her, transform her into the warrior she has always pretended not to be? And Jasmine, does she stay in the shadows? Or does she finally step into the light with her own truth? Every unresolved question is a match waiting for you to strike with your engagement. This is where you come in. I want you to stop scrolling for a second and imagine yourself in that hospital hallway. Fluorescent lights flickering above you, the sound of monitors echoing down the corridor, detectives whispering, reporters shouting, and Rasheeda screaming like her soul has been ripped out of her body. What would you do? Whose side would you take? Whose story do you believe? Because the family is divided, the city is divided, and the fans are divided. And right now your voice can tip the scale. So here's what I need you to do. First, if you felt even a fraction of the pain in Rasheeda's voice tonight, hit that like button right now. Let her know that her tears were not in vain, that the world sees her, that her cries did not echo into emptiness. Second, subscribe to this channel, because this story is nowhere near over. Every day new twists are surfacing, new confessions, new betrayals, and you don't want to be the last to know when Kirk opens his eyes and whispers his first words. We will be here breaking it down, moment by moment, detail by detail, making sure you never miss a heartbeat of this saga. Third, and most important, drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think really happened. Was this truly just an accident, or was it a calculated attempt to silence Kirk forever? Do you believe Scrappy's defense, or does the sleeve and the ring tell you all you need to know? Do you think Jasmine is hiding something, or was she just another victim caught in the flames of a feud bigger than herself? Your opinion matters more than you think, because the fans are the jury in this court of public drama. The producers, the cast, the families, they watch what you say. They follow the conversations, and your voice echoes back into the story itself. Don't just watch, participate, because if tonight has proven anything, it's that nothing stays hidden forever. The assistant thought they could bury the truth in a pocket, but a reflection in a window betrayed them. The family thought they could grieve quietly, but the world caught every scream on video. Kirk thought his secrets about his health could stay buried, but the collapse forced them into daylight. The same way, your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions are now part of this legacy. So I ask you again, what happens next? Does Kirk come back stronger, exposing names and rewriting the future of his family? Does Rasheeda stand by his side and turn her pain into power? Does Jasmine's silence finally break into revelation? Does Scrappy prove his innocence beyond doubt? Or does the stain of suspicion linger forever? The choice of how this story is remembered rests in your hands as much as theirs. Like this video right now if you felt the weight of every heartbeat in that ICU. Subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of this unraveling storm. And comment below with your truth, because the truth is not decided in the hospital. It's decided out here, with all of us watching, waiting, judging, hoping. Remember, behind every headline is a life. Behind every scandal is a family. Behind every scream is a heart begging not to break. Tonight you witnessed not just gossip, not just drama, but survival clawing its way through betrayal. Kirk Frost is still fighting, Rasheeda is still standing, and the Frost legacy is still hanging by a thread. The question is, will you hold that thread with them, or will you let it snap? It's your move now. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment with your rawest thoughts. Join the conversation, join the movement, and let your voice be heard in the middle of the storm. Because this story is not ending here, it's only getting louder. And you, yes, you watching this right now, are part of the next chapter. Don't stay silent, don't stay on the sidelines. Choose your side, speak your truth, and stay locked in, because the Frost Saga isn't over, right's only just beginning.